Hello there, I'm Scott Ewart, and today I'm going to show you how to prepare your hard drive or a new hard drive to insert into your computer, how to insert it into your computer, and how to convert a hard drive between one of the two types. The two types being the IDE type, which is the old standard, and Serial ATA, which is the new standard. Now, the first thing you need is a jumper. It's just a small piece of plastic, and as you can see, there's a tiny metal prong on the inside. That's what you'll be using to connect the hard drive. Now, we're going to use the IDE hard drive, which is the old style connection, as you can see from the long strip. Now, on each hard drive there is usually a small diagram. It's either stuck on or printed near the end where the connections are. And here, as you can see, there's three settings. There's the master setting, which would make it the primary hard drive, the first hard drive that it boots from. There is cable select, which is which is the most ideal method, which allows the BIOS to select which position it is based on where it's positioned on the cable. We will go into that in more detail later. And the final one is the slave jumper, which sets it as a secondary hard drive or a slave drive. Because we want this to be our master, we're going to put it onto the master jumper, which is outlined here. So reversing it round, following the diagram, it needs to go on these two prongs on the end. So we just slide the jumper on and push it firmly in, and it's ready to go. So the jumper's set, and this will now be our master hard drive, the one that it boots from. So to connect this up, you need to find your IDE cable. As you can see, there are two pins on this IDE cable, and there is a homing section here on the IDE hard drive right here. So place the IDE cable into the slot. It'll only go in one direction if it's got a homing pins. Push it down firmly so it goes all the way in, and as you can see now it's connected. In the old days, the method of finding out which way the cable went was based on a tiny red cable at the end. If you've got a really old hard drive or really old cables, that's the way to discover which way the cable goes. Now, with this put in, we now place it inside our unit. Based on what kind of case you have, you may have to attach with screws certain elements, but with this one it's just a slide in. So now we need to provide power to our hard drive. You can use one of these are just a standard jack. You may be more familiar with it being white and sort of see-through. Either one of these is just fine, depending on what kind of connections or PSU unit you have. So connect this up. It'll only go one way. So slide that in and push it in, and there you go. You now have power to your hard drive. Now, as I mentioned before, there are two types of connection. That was the IDE, the old style connection, or parallel ATA, as it is actually called. This is Serial ATA, or SATA, the new style of connection. As you can see here, these are quite slender connections. Now, this long one here is for the power, and this short one here is your data connection. It also has a jumper, which is factory setting jumpers, and an old style power connection over at this side. But the two that you're going to be worried about are the data and power connections for Serial ATA here. So first of all, we're going to put this hard drive into our PC. To do this, we need a SATA connection. These are SATA cables. They're quite thin, usually red, and they're the smaller connection of the two. They have a homing pin. It will only go in one direction because if you look very carefully, you can see there's a slightly L-shaped notch, and that is reflected on the SATA drive as well. So just slide that in, only go in one way, and then we put this inside the case also. To power your serial ATA hard drive, you'll need to connect the serial ATA power cable, which looks like this. You just need to shove it right down here. It'll only go in one direction, and you just push it in. And then your serial ATA hard drive is now powered up, as well as connected via this data cable. So that's how you install a hard drive manually. But there is also another issue which has arose in the modern day. With the coming of serial ATA, the formats have divided. If you've got old IDE hard drives, but have bought a new motherboard, you may find there is no connection that supports your old hard drive. And vice versa, you may have an old motherboard and have bought yourself a new hard drive to discover that your serial ATA connection will not work with your older motherboard. There are ways around this, and we have two products here which are provided by Nexans at nexans.co.uk. They are serial ATA to IDE and IDE to serial ATA converters. So first of all, we're going to use the converter from the old style hard drive, IDE, to serial ATA, which is this converter here. So let's open it up, and you'll need to take the two cables out of the back of the packaging. You'll need these for later. And you need this little circuit board here first. Now, first of all, we're going to attach this small circuit board to the back of our IDE hard drive. Now, you'll need to find where the homing pin is, which is in the center at the top here, and match it up with the homing slot, just like you did with the hard drive before. And you just slowly push it in, and just give it a firm push, but don't push down too hard, as you may damage the components. But just get it to set itself into the pins. And you may notice there's a 4-prong section here that fits perfectly with this tiny little 4-prong connector that also came with it. There's nothing much to it, just slide that on like that. And this connector now will connect to your general power connector, like we did in the case previously. Finally, you need to use the serial ATA connection, which will now mean that you can connect this to your old hard drive using this connector here, and then connect it up to your motherboard, your newer motherboard, which only supports serial ATA. So now we just slide the hard drive in like we did before, but this time we've got the little chip board here which is converting it to serial ATA. Using the small power adapter, you need to connect this up to your regular power connectors. So here's a regular one, and what we do is we carefully place this onto that. And then we use another one to connect this end to your hard drive. Now power is running through to the small connector, which is attached here, and to the hard drive itself. So you've got enough power to power the hard drive and power the chipboard, which is converting the format. Now, finally, you take the serial ATA data connector and attach this to the bottom of the chipboard, just like you did with the serial ATA board. And as you can see now, both connections are attached, and you should be able to use your IDE hard drive through a serial ATA connection. That's the old style to new style. And then there's from the new style serial ATA to old style IDE. So once again, pull all the components out of the packaging. Got your two connectors just like before, and the small circuit board. Now, this works somewhat differently. As you can see, it's quite a long, thin circuit board. This doesn't go into the back of your hard drive. It actually goes into your motherboard. So you plug this into the serial into the IDE slot, and then you can attach these two connectors, which is one of them is the regular 4-pin connector, and the secondary is a special serial ATA connector which will connect from this into your hard drive. So you can plug that in, power up your hard drive using the old style plug, and connect the two in. So we'll just input this in now. So now we need to attach this card into the main IDE slot on your motherboard, and then attach this cable to a power supply, and finally attach a serial ATA cable to this tiny little slot in the top of the card. Now the disadvantage of using this method is that one serial ATA cable will take up one IDE slot. So there's no way of doing multiple hard drives from one slot. But at least this way it solves your problem of having a new hard drive on old hardware. And there we have it. We've connected two hard drives via their regular connections. We've then converted those two hard drives into the opposite connections, which is ideal for anybody who's struggling with old or new technology and the transition between the two. And finally, just a general introduction to hard drives and jumpers.